Welcome back to Your Italian Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Hopkins, founder of Your Italian Passport, your one-stop shop for everything Italian citizenship. Today's guest is someone really exciting, everybody. It is actor, author, Stanley Tucci. For those of you wondering, how in the world did she get Stanley Tucci on this podcast? Well, the answer is we helped him with his Italian citizenship. Stanley Tucci, one of Italy's newest citizens, everybody, is here to talk about his citizenship journey, his Italian heritage, his thoughts on Italy from all of his travels for both his shows and for his books. So it's an exciting episode. I know you're going to enjoy it. Let's dive right in. Stanley Tucci, welcome to Your Italian Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. This is such a treat for me.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Of course. I think we probably need to explain to my massive audience that's watching this, what in the world are they seeing? They're seeing somebody that they definitely know, talking to someone that they're wondering what is happening here. How has all of this come to be? And the short answer is, we work together on your Italian citizenship. But there's a little background here that I'm not even sure you're aware of, which is that I reached out in 2022, which you probably are like, what are you talking about? And I'm a social media nightmare. I don't use it in my personal life. And so here I am trying to find you on social media and send you a DM, and epic failure. So I found an email, a professional email for your wife, Felicity, and I wrote to her saying, hey, I just think I saw, stop me if any of this sounds like, no, that's not true. On your show, Searching for Italy, I think you said in an episode, I need to get my citizenship. And I thought, I think I can help with that. So reached out and realized I'm like way late to the game, and you have already had assistance. And I thought, okay, all right, I will step back. But did you know any of that had happened?
I can't, honestly, I'm not sure
It's okay.
I do. I don't know. I think we might have, well, obviously I did have people working on it at the time.
You did. Oh, you definitely did. I mean, the answer that I got in 2022 was like, hey, late to the game, like, step aside. And I think at that time I thought, well, there's not really much I can add to this picture here. So just get out of the way. And then, zipping ahead, I happened to check back in a few years later in 2025 and we'll come back to the whole citizenship experience, and realized, oh, we are not yet across this finish line. Maybe I can help here after all. So, yeah. And here we sit.
No, and first of all, thank you. I'm so thrilled that you did, because, it wasn't happening. And as you know, the rules were changing all the time, it seemed, and there were people working on it who I believe were working diligently. I never actually met them. We never, but we exchanged a lot of emails. I had my lawyer Ted, who was incredibly helpful in trying to help me find anybody who could, get me across that finish line, and you made it happen, and I can't thank you enough. I can't wait to use I don't have the passport yet, but I can't wait to use it time I go.
You will soon. And then all of that is correct. I mean, everything that you went through in those years had nothing to do with your representation. It had everything to do with every time we turned around, the law was changing, and you were getting, you were just a victim, as so many were, in what was going on in the world of Italian citizenship law.
But can you explain to me why things changed so much, and from what I think maybe we spoke about, or I can't remember who I talked about it with, but that there was an influx of people who had Italian heritage, that there were just so many of them, but they were using that passport for all the wrong reasons. Is that supposedly what the story was, which is why the Italian government sort of started to, stop people from, were doing everything they could to stop people from getting it.
Yeah, that's one narrative. I think there's some truth in that yes, the fact of the matter is Italian diaspora, those of us of Italian descent living outside of Italy, not yet recognized as citizens or already recognized as citizens outnumber the 60 or so million that are in Italy. And so there are more of us than there are of them.
Right, yeah.
And from what I have been told, applications at one point reached over 300,000 a year. And so you can see how, there is maybe some reason for legitimate concern by Italy that once we are recognized as citizens, we have the right to vote. We have the right to do lots of things that can influence what's going on in Italy on a day-to-day basis, even if it's not affecting us on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
That said, I think they inflate these numbers a bit. I know that there is sort of a negative view to some extent of some of the applications that were coming out of South America. I know that they want people to believe that there was rampant fraud in those applications, and I think some of that is true. But we've all sort of been caught up in these changes as they seek to address the fact that Italy 20 years from now, given the low birth rate there, the older population there, and the existence of the diaspora elsewhere, could look a lot different than it looks today. And so they are struggling to figure out, how do we maintain Italy as we know it? What is Italy? What is Italian culture without it just being diluted or lost entirely by, non-Italian speaking people of frankly different cultures who, might be linked to a parent or a grandparent, but many of us are linked to somebody, myself included, much more distantly related.
Right, I see. So at what point did they stop? At what point did they start to put the brakes on? What year was that?
I would say the first real brakes were put on in 2023 with something called the minor issue that came out of the courts saying if your ancestor became a foreign national through naturalization while the next in line was a minor, that's why it's called the minor issue. That's going to be a barrier to citizenship. That was sort of that was summer of 2023. And that was sort of the first real, okay, we're going to cut out a bunch of people with this. And then that gets adopted at the consulates in 2024. And then the chaos of 2025, which was, this emergency decree, if anybody's heard of that what's commonly called the Tajani Decree. Tajani's the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Italy, who went on national television and surprised even the Italian parliament and said, hey, new citizenship law, boom, effective immediately. Just a few people are eligible in comparison, et cetera, to what had been. And then that gets ratified by the Italian parliament in 2025 and all of that. And so here we sit a year later, essentially, with that whole law under scrutiny by Italy's two high courts this summer, deciding, is it constitutional? Are there other elements of it that should just be ignored, thrown out, et cetera? There's a two-court system in Italy that's very interesting, that they have a Supreme Court, which is not that supreme. I always say that. It's an advisory court only, though it's called the Italian Supreme Court. And it can be ignored by lower courts. And it can even be ignored by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who dictates what goes on at the consulates. And then you have Constitutional Court, which is big and bad. And if they say something is unconstitutional, boom, everybody has to get in line and follow that immediately.
Right.
And the fascinating part right now is that these two courts have a very different political take on things. And so one is arguably in our favor. That's the Supreme Court. And Constitutional Court has thus far indicated maybe not so much in our favor. So it's going to be a really fascinating summer.
But what was the decree then? What's the gist of the decree?
Yeah, so the decree on March 28th of 2025, Minister Tajani goes on TV and says, hey, the new law will say you're only eligible for recognition of citizenship if you are the child or grandchild of an Italy-born person. There was a lot of other elements to the law that were not mentioned conveniently for some in the decree, but then it got even stricter in May of that same year, where they said, okay, not only do you have to be a child or grandchild, but it has to be through an ancestor who was never anything other than an Italian citizen.
Oh, wow. Right. Yeah. Right.
So that's, there's very few people that can say, my ancestor came here and lived and died and never became a national of the place that they emigrated to. It's a small group. Having done this for 15 years, it's not that, though I do have some great grandparents who just never really got it off the ground. I tell this to everybody that, they had 9 children. She had a wooden leg. A woman with a wooden leg had 9 children in Pittsburgh, and they never had any heat in the house. So yes, but that's like ancient history. These people that came and weren't necessarily thriving, but were just merely surviving. Anyway, long story short, eligibility has shrunk dramatically, and by design, out of Italy. And I will be so curious to know. I'm always wondering whether the Italian people and the Italian leadership are in line about this. And in your travels around Italy, do you ever speak to people about the citizenship process, whether through your own personal experience or otherwise? And do you feel like they feel they're opposed to it, or do you think they embrace us?
I've never encountered anyone who was opposed to it. When I say it's taken me, when I tell them basically it's taken me 10 years to get it, and they're shocked. They go, "Well, what about your grandparents?" I go, "Yeah, they were all born in Italy," and then I try to explain, what even before, it used to be just the paternal side, right? It had to be your paternal side. Then suddenly they made a law. It could be your maternal side, that if they were born, then you could get it that way. But then, of course, everything you described just took everything and just made it so much more complicated and more difficult. But I have never encountered anyone saying, they say, "Well, I know somebody who can help you." They always say, "I know somebody who can help you." And because they're like, "Well, you should do it." Not only because you have grandparents who were Italian, but also because you come to Italy all the time and you, in essence, promote Italy in a way. It's not doing it. I'm not doing like the show that I do necessarily to promote Italy, but I want to show the beauty of it and the complexity of it. And I suppose in some ways promoting it. I want people to understand how complicated it is through the prism of food.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what you accomplished with the show. I mean, Italy, and I agree. In my experience, individual Italians embrace the idea of citizenship recognition and sort of look at it as this closing of a circle that people left 100, 120 years ago on a nickel and a dime and a hope and a prayer, and thought, okay, I'm going to see how this goes, never realizing that in 100 years we might be trying to get back there. I think a lot of them thought, oh my gosh, no, I'm running from poverty, I'm running from starvation into God knows what on the other side of the ocean, and here we sit 120 years later trying to close that circle and feeling like the door is shut. But
I know
it's interesting.
The door is shut to a place that, and this is what you mentioned before we started recording, what's the reason you want to do this? What is the reason you want your Italian citizenship? It's because I love that country, and it's because I lived there when I was young. I lived in Florence when I was young, and it completely changed my life for the better. And ever since then, I would get these pangs of needing to go to Italy. And I went when I was 22, maybe, something like that. I went on a Eurail pass. I took a Eurail pass, $25 a day. And I'm not kidding. This is 1983, something like that, 84. And you could do it. That was with accommodation. And it was amazing. And I felt like I couldn't move forward in my adult life without having gone back to a place where I became a teenager. I know it may sound funny, but I couldn't. I needed. There's had to be this sort of completion or something that I left kind of on an inhale at the age of 13. I was only there for a year, but it had such a profound effect on me that I left without some sort of completion. So going back for me and spending a week or two, whatever it was, there traveling with no money, made me able to move forward as an adult and, you know, in my chosen profession. And obviously the country has it keeps sort of beckoning me, and I think, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to do the show, as I said, was I wanted to go back and really see if I could tell the stories of Italy through the prism of food. But it has a you know, a kind of a grip on you, and part of that is just genetic, and part of that is having experienced it physically. It attaches itself to you, and
Sure.
you need to go back.
When you, I've always been curious about this. I'm aware of you having spent a year in Florence as a teenager. When your parents announced we're doing this, were you initially excited, or did you think, "Oh my God, this is the worst thing I've ever heard of"?
Well, both. I mean, I remember, now we hadn't been anywhere. We hadn't traveled anywhere. You know, my family didn't have any money. My father was an art teacher. You know, my mother worked in the office.
I hear you.
And I'd never been on a plane. The only train I'd ever been on was, I think, maybe we went into New York City once or twice, maybe. And I'd never stayed, I don't know if I even had stayed in a hotel. I barely went to restaurants. And anyway, so they said, we were like, it's how exciting, Italy, wow, a plane in Italy. And then panic started to set in because you're a teenager, and my sisters were, you know, 3 years each respectively younger. And there was panic. And I remember when we all got to Rome, the three of us, we were in this little pensione. The Pensione Texas was the name of it.
Of all things, right? Of course.
Yeah, and we were in one room. My parents were in the next room, connecting, and my sisters and I were all in one bed. I'd never slept in a city before. You know, I was from the suburbs. You know, it was quite rural, rather rural suburbs, and we all started crying, and we were so afraid of what I don't know.
What are we doing? What is this? Yeah.
You know, then we went out, we walked around, we went to the Colosseum, we went to the, you know, and we saw, and suddenly you were like, wow, this is incredible. And then we went to a restaurant, which was right around the corner, because my dad had like a voucher or something that the pension had given him. And we went to this restaurant, and I remember, I wrote about it in one of the books I wrote, like how I remember very distinctly, because Italian restaurants in those days were all, you know, if it wasn't a trattoria, if it was a ristorante, it was bright light, white tablecloths, waiters with white or off-white jackets, bow ties, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, this is incredible. What is this place?
You're thinking, I've been to the Ponderosa, but this is quite a step up from that.
I was like, oh my gosh. The only restaurant I'd ever been to was a pizzeria, I think, or Friendly's.
Right, yes, I remember Friendly's, right, with the ice cream after the hamburgers.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. In fact, what's so funny, do you know Massimo Bottura, right? You know who the chef?
Yes.
His wife, Laura, she was about 10 years younger than I am. She worked in the Friendly's that I used to go to.
Small world.
Waitress, which I thought was so funny, in Bedford, Mount Kisco, New York. Yeah. Anyway, it was, once we found an apartment in Florence, I mean, my dad, who spoke Italian pretty well, my mom didn't really speak that Italian that much. She could speak a dialect more. And he, they found an apartment, moved into this apartment, started to play soccer, with the kids. I'd never played soccer before. And I was put directly into an Italian school.
I was wondering that.
Yeah.
There was no English, just Italian.
Yeah, I was put in like a year before so a year back. I mean, they put me like a year back. When they were learning grammar, that's when I was learning the grammar as well. So it was incredibly helpful. Within 2 months, by 3 months, I spoke fluently.
Mm-hmm. So it's amazing how fast you absorb it when you're there.
That's not happening at the age of 65. I got news for you. But at the age of 12, that happened. But was I nervous about it? Yeah, we were nervous, and then I absolutely loved it. And then around 8, 9 months, I was ready to go back to America and see my friends and, run around the woods again and all that stuff.
But it stuck with you. It was truly the experience of your life at that point. There's no two ways about it.
It was the greatest. We traveled through Italy. We went to, I can't even tell you how many different museums and churches, my father being an art teacher, which is a great gift to have. You don't realize it necessarily at the time, but you know it now, to have a father with a sophisticated eye showing you around Italy.
Sure.
That's pretty rare.
Yeah, that's a different level of getting to know a place, hearing what he knows and him, imparting it on you. Would you say your childhood life in New York was sort of a classic Italian-American experience? Were your grandparents in your life on a frequent basis?
Oh, yeah. We visited my grandparents. I grew up in Cittanova, New York, which is about 50 miles north of the city. And both of my parents came from Peekskill, New York, which is about 40 miles on the Hudson. So we were on the border of Connecticut, where our house was. So it would take us about 25 minutes or so to get to my grandparents' house. And we would visit them almost every Sunday. Either my dad's father, because his mom had died when I was quite young. I think I was 7 when she died. And so we would visit him, or we would visit my grandparents. So it was maybe every weekend, maybe every other weekend, something like that. My cousin Joe, with whom I wrote Big Night, used to live right next door to my grandparents, my maternal grandparents. So I would see him all the time. And yes, it was a huge, huge part. We were with them either one side of the family or the other every holiday. My aunt and uncle on my father's side lived right near us, eventually on the same road as us, and we used to all play tennis together. My aunt's sons were tennis pros at different clubs around as they got older. We used to go skiing with them together, and it was a wonderful way to grow up, and it was a really wonderful way to understand how complicated families can be.
Sure. Yes, I think that's...
Also, and I'll just stop right there. But also how wonderful they can be.
Sure.
And it's where I learned the basis. Well, it's what made me just love food. Because on both sides of the family, food was first and foremost.
Right.
Yeah.
And the great sort of unifier of you can be fighting about something, but you still have to sit down and eat. So let's eat something good.
Very good cooks. My father's sisters were very good. I was very close with my father's, one of my father's sisters, and she was like a sort of second mom to me. And she was a wonderful cook. But different than my mother, but still, my mother's like a kind of a genius.
I think I found a recipe that got published that your mother did in the Journal News in 1999. Risotto with butternut squash, lobster, and sage, as contributed by Joan Tropiano Tucci. and Stanley Tucci, who I presume is your dad and not you, collaborating with mom in 1999 on this recipe. But it just sounds delicious.
It is delicious.
Yes, cooking has, obviously been a big part of your life. I don't know if you I'm sure you do know this, but I'm sure the audience doesn't. So all 4 of your grandparents, not only from Italy, but from Calabria. Father's side of the family starts in Vermont. They were stonecutters, both in Italy and in the U.S. So I presume there was like a quarry in this Northfield, Vermont.
Yeah.
And I found I know that Teresa Pisani, your paternal grandmother, died when you were young, as you mentioned. Right. There are the most endearing quotes about her online, if you have ever found these, but I had to share this with you. So when they got married, your grandparents, this was written up in the Vermont Register as the bride is one of Northfield, Vermont's most popular and attractive of the younger set. You may know her as the efficient clerk in the store of Boyles and Smith.
Oh my God.
She was so loved.
So sweet.
I know. And even when your father's oldest brother, I believe, was born in New York,
Frank.
Vermont Register wrote about her again, saying, Teresa Pisani, the adorable clerk at Boyles and Smith, well, she's had a child in New York. I just thought, oh my gosh, this woman really made an impact on the community. But I know, so dear.
I love that. I have to try my father later. I'll tell him that you.
I thought your dad might like that.
Yeah. By all accounts, she was loved by everyone. It was a very warm, loving person. I have no recollection of her, unfortunately.
No, I can understand. I mean, I think I read that she died in 1966. So you were a young child, and And from what I understand, your grandfather, Stanislaw Tucci, might meet her because he was working with your great-grandfather, Domenico Pisani, at what I presume is a quarry or some sort of in Vermont.
Yeah, it would have been a quarry because Vermont is known, right, for all the stone, right? Granite, I think, in particular. So that's where he learned his trade. And he came over at the age of 14 or something like that. And was in New York City, by all accounts, for a very short period of time, and then went up to Vermont. And that's where he learned stone cutting. Eventually opened up his own business, moved to Peekskill. They moved to Peekskill. He opened up his own business, monument business.
And as in city monuments or as in headstones?
No, headstones.
Okay.
Headstones.
There's always going to be work in headstones.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. That's why they put a fence around the cemetery. People are dying to get in.
Right.
But he did that. And, my dad, would help, and my uncle Frank also. Frank was an architect and interior designer. My father became an artist, and they would design monuments for my grandfather, for, whomever would come to him and say, I need a monument. They would design them. He had the business with his brother, I think originally, one of his brothers. And then I don't know if there was a falling out or somebody sold. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I saw that there's a brother tracking along with your grandfather closely in their time in the U.S. You mentioned that he came at the age of 14, and that's the same story for my great-grandfather, who came alone at the age of 14. Wow. And in having done this citizenship work for 15 years, I think about that all the time. Can you imagine this boat ride of 2 weeks to a place you've never been? You don't know what is awaiting you, and you're alone. Some of them alone. Some of them, your maternal grandmother, for instance, was 3. Some very young children, some teenagers. I mean, what a bold move, and what courage it took to say, I'm doing it. I'm just going to go and give this a shot.
Yeah, but think about how desperate you have to be to want to do that, or as a parent to send your child at the age of 14 by himself or herself sometimes to another country where they don't speak the language and they've got a few bucks in their pocket Now there were always some sort of familial connection for the most part, right? So there was somebody who was going to make them a cousin or an uncle or whatever. But that's it. And then I don't know how many times they ever saw their parents again.
Sometimes never.
Never.
Right. My great-grandfather never saw his parents again. He was their only surviving child. They lost 5 children in young childhood. He was the only one who survived to the teenage years, and they never saw him again.
It's
right.
It's horrifying to me. It's horrifying. When my kids, I have many children because my first wife passed away about 16 years ago, and she, we had 3 kids who were, in their 20s now. And then Felicity and I have 2 little kids. And I hate not seeing them. I cannot imagine such a thing. My son is 11. In a couple of years, he would have been shipped off to America from Italy because there was no opportunity for him.
Right.
None.
It's just a wild decision that families made.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like, when people today talk about refugees and they talk about immigration, you just think you have no idea do you think that those people really want to leave their homes? Do you think they really want to, and they want to come and take your jobs? Is that what you really believe? Well, you're an idiot, because it's not true. They don't want to leave their homes. They would love to live wherever they live because that's where they're from. That's where their history is. They don't want to leave. They want to be there. They want to work. They want to be healthy. They want to raise their families and lead a perfectly normal life. That's what they want. But instead, they can't because of famine, because of pestilence, because of war.
Right. I think people forget that immigration is driven by necessity, dire necessity and desperation. It's same is true today as it was 120 years ago, as it was even prior to that.
I'm an immigrant. I'm an immigrant in England. Nobody has any issue with me.
Right.
Right. That's interesting.
Right, isn't it? Yes, it's always the poor that we think, exactly. There's no room. There's no room for you here. Yes, when historically we have seen that every single time there's room if you just decide that there will be.
If you decide to make room, there's room.
Yes. Yep. I often think not just the boat journey, but I think back to when you were on and searching for Italy and you were doing the Calabria episode, and here you are in a car driving up to Cittanova, I think it was.
Yeah.
How about the journey from your home to the boat?
Oh.
I think it is hard to get to Cittanova today. How did they get to the port 120 years ago? On a mule? Did they walk? Right. I mean, the answer is they must have. Exactly. It must have been a mule.
In a cart?
Right.
There's somebody who was going there and took you there? And how long did it take you to get there?
Yeah, right. I mean, just the full journey.
Yeah. I mean, look, like you say, in parts of it, this was part of the difficulty in doing the show, is that to get from point A to point B in Calabria or Abruzzo or Trentino Alto Adige is that's like 2 hours.
Yes.
If you're in Trentino, you can ski it in a half an hour. You know what I mean? From one town to another, you just go, boom, boom, you're there in a half hour. Otherwise, you're in a car for 2 hours.
Yeah. I've come close to Cittanova. I don't know if you know of a town called Canolo. It's essentially come up the mountain from the other ocean. If you're coming up to Cittanova from this side, come up this way. And I am acutely aware of how difficult it is to get there today in 2026. It is a trek to get there.
And this also points to the fact that, certain regions in particular, I mean, Trentino Alto Adige is a more wealthy region. Whereas Calabria It's not. Wow. And Calabria does not have the infrastructure to allow it to sort of rise out of what is still substantial poverty and, oppression by corruption. And that is so unfortunate. I mean, when we filmed there, I was really made quite sad about it because it's so beautiful and the people are so nice, but you're just driving through villages that are completely abandoned.
Yes.
Because everybody left.
There's nothing to do. There's no work. There's no way to make a life for oneself and their children.
They go to the north of Italy. They go to not so much America anymore. They come to England. There's a huge, I walk down the streets all the time and I hear Italian spoken constantly. You have a concentration of like 500,000 Italians here. It's huge. Every Italian restaurant you go into, most of the staff is all Italian.
Oh, I did not know that there was such an...
Oh, it's huge. All the waiters, so many of the chefs, so many of the staff, so many of the managers are all, and in clubs and in bars, all Italian. The butcher shop in my little area where I live in London, I walked in there, 3 butchers, all Italian. And it's a British-owned shop. I mean, it's like America 70 years ago.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I think Italy, Italy's going through, Italy's having a moment where clearly these young people aren't leaving because there's ample opportunity in Italy. They're leaving because they're finding that there is better opportunity someplace else. Not necessarily, like you said, doesn't have to be all the way in America, but maybe London.
No, and this is the thing that I just spoke with a fella who's a driver who we worked with on the show and wanted to go to Rome. He drives me around if I need it, and he's become a really good friend. And he said it's really hard. The opportunities really aren't here. The opportunity to forward yourself, it doesn't exist in Italy the way it does in other countries. And another friend of mine who lives in Rome, and she said the same thing. She goes, you can get a job, but you're going to make this much money at that job, and you're going to stay in that job. And it's not going to be a job that you want to stay in, but you're going to have to stay in it, or you're going to have to leave the country. And that is heartbreaking when you think about how much Italy has to offer. And I don't know the reasons for it. I don't know. I don't know.
I think some of it is, at least in the South, is still the stranglehold of organized crime. I think, but that doesn't explain the North. That doesn't explain Central Italy. I think, I don't know. I don't know that I have the answer to why isn't Italy willing to or able to advance the way much of Western Europe is and has already done, clearly.
So much of Italy, so much of the economy of Italy is based on tourism. And if you don't have those, if you're not, like Puglia now is becoming a place, right, over the last 10 years where people are starting to go, but still it doesn't really have the infrastructure that it needs to have. Calabria, forget it. Nobody goes.
It's the Wild West.
When was the last time you heard someone who didn't have Calabrian roots say, I think I'll go to Calabria?
Never.
They never say it because there's no there there.
Correct.
And that's unfortunate because, as I said, it's stunning. Stunning.
It is. I mean, it's beautiful territory, and it could have so much to offer. Speaking of, Cittanova, where your citizenship is now linked home to your maternal grandmother.
Yeah.
In the episode when you were in Calabria, you had a massive lunch with people in Cittanova. Who were all of those people?
They were all people who were related to me.
Wow.
And my parents went, And a lot of them I remember, not a lot of them, a few of them I remember meeting when they were young, when they were in their 20s. So, and now they're like all old men. You know what I mean? And I was like, how can that be the same person? Of course, then I look at myself and I think, how can that be the same person?
How could that be the same person? Right.
But yeah, and so a number of them were still alive. And it was a really great experience. They didn't live in Cittanova proper anymore. They lived sort of outside. And a lot of them lived in it's fascinating too. It's just such a not American thing, or British thing, which is, hey, I'm going to build a house, and then we're just going to attach your house to my house, and then we'll attach one more house to that house, because you're my brother or you're my son, and that's your blah blah blah. So we'll all just like a commune.
Yes. Yes.
And they always have two kitchens, meaning each house has two kitchens. They have the regular kitchen, and then they have a kitchen in the basement because it's cooler or whatever. And, there's always a big wood burning stove someplace where they can cook and burn whatever they want. And it's fascinating. And it's still happening. Like, they're still living the way they lived hundreds of years ago. But with obviously now with amenities, and they were successful businessmen and all that, as with like agricultural machinery and stuff like that. But still, that the idea that you all live together, no matter what, it just doesn't go away. And the only time they go away, they go far away.
Right. Unless you're leaving forever, you're never leaving. You're barely even going to the grocery store alone. We'll do it collectively. We'll go together. Yes. Well, let's all go. Yes, it's a big to-do. We're going to go down the hill. We're going to get the groceries today. Yes, it's what we do on Sundays.
So-and-so's coming in from the airport. Who's going to pick them up? We all are.
Oh, yes. Why? So a little known fact, the person that I started Your Italian Passport with 15 years ago was from Calabria. And so that is why I spent so much time in Calabria. And these stories that you're telling are identical. I mean, it used to be endearing and at the same time so frustrating to me, where it was like this discussion of what time are we going to go to the grocery store could take the entire morning. And I would think, my God, I could have gone and been back by now. What are we doing?
I know.
But it's at the same time, it was like I would tell myself, Lauren, just slow down. Just enjoy this. Just enjoy that, like, you can make a whole day out of going to the grocery store and spend the first half of it talking about when are we going to go and who's going to drive. And
then when you get there, what are you going to buy? What are you going to buy? Is it going to be this? Should we do that? Well, that doesn't look good. Well, try these. What about these? No, I don't hate those. Why do you hate those? And then it goes into that. You're in the grocery store, you come home, you're exhausted, and then you start cooking.
Right. And I really think, here I am getting frustrated because my life of running around from one thing to the other, never enjoying any of it, is really a better existence. No, I don't think I'm doing it right.
No.
So chill out, learn to be, learn to be slower. Well, Stanley, I have some exciting news from Cittanova. So your birth record is registered there as part of the completion of the citizenship process and the closing of that circle. And they have written, and they have asked the following. They said, "Dear Mr. Stanley Tucci," this is from the mayor, Domenico Antico. He wrote, "I am pleased and proud to inform you on behalf of myself, the municipal administration, and the entire town, that of your entry into the community of Cittanova as a prestigious fellow citizen who has brought honor to his birthplace through the virtuistic instruments of cinematic art and culture. We would be happy to personally present you with citizenship at the municipal palace in an official ceremony in accordance with the ceremonial procedures prescribed by law on a date of your choosing, or next summer is what they proposed, if that doesn't. Next summer, or a date of your choosing. So I don't know if you're interested in another trip back to Cittanova. I would imagine yes.
That would be pretty cool. I would love that. That's incredibly moving and flattering.
I thought so too. And I thought, it really sort of what we hit upon at the beginning of the discussion, which is, all these changes to the citizenship law from the leadership. And here, the people in the town of Cittanova, in this example, are so thrilled about your completion of this process that they're saying, please, let's make this a reason to celebrate. That I think the people of Italy and the leadership might not be of one mind on this issue.
Yeah. Look, I can understand if you're getting 300,000 applications a year. I can understand the government going, wait a minute. We have to figure something out because something's not right. Do you know what I mean? In a way. And yet, at the same time, there was that huge diaspora and from a Catholic country, which means more often than not, there's going to be a lot of kids in each family, right? So that's the way it works. Yeah, that's the way it works. I mean, that's the way it was supposed to be. And so it was.
I often think that it is, the north and the south of Italy, it's really arguably two different countries, and the north has a certain way of looking at the south and vice versa.
Yes,
and I kind of think this rejection of the diaspora is just one last sort of taking it to the south of, just a bunch of poor peasants who left, and, okay, so your descendants made something of themselves. Well, that doesn't mean that doesn't play here, is sometimes what I think is the kind of the message.
It could be that prejudice that, has, yeah, I mean, we know, like you say, there is that prejudice within the country still, which is unfortunate. And yet, at the same time, you do see the difficulties of living in the South and the sort of implacability of it, and things not changing, whereas the North is constantly changing. It is very different and very, very frustrating. Look, my hope is that isn't the case, what you just described, but who knows?
Just two last questions on citizenship. Yeah. So knowing that, and maybe this is news, knowing that you and your minor children will be citizens, but your adult children, if the law that's currently in place stands, will not be.
I know.
How does that make you feel after all of your time in Italy?
It's incredibly frustrating because I know that my children love Italy. They've been going there since they were little. My older son is a chef. His twin sister is a hair and makeup artist. They both went to university to study different disciplines and ended up doing those things. And they're brilliant at what they do. Their younger sister just graduated from the American University in Rome. She's completely in love with Italy and refuses to leave, basically. Although how she's going to afford it, I don't know. But we'll address that. We are addressing that. So if she had her way, she would never leave. And I know the other two would spend as much time there as possible. My son has spent summers there with friends who have a place in Umbria and worked on their farm. He understands Italian, speak a little bit. They absolutely love it. And it's heartbreaking to me to know that they have so much to offer the country, and the country has so much to offer them, and eventually their children, that they don't have easy access to it is heartbreaking to me. My hope is that those laws will change and allow them to get what I think is their right.
Last question. It's a two-parter. What does being an officially recognized citizen change for you, if anything? And what would you tell someone who was considering embarking on the citizenship journey?
I would to answer your last question first, I would tell them to do it, that it's not going to be easy, but I would also have them call you, but because you made it happen. And but that they really should pursue it. Because it's very funny how this little pamphlet can be so meaningful. And there's a part of Italy in Trentino Alto Adige. There are the Ladin people, right? Not the Latins, but the Ladins, who have been there for thousands of years, pre-Roman. And they say, I don't care what it says on my passport. It doesn't matter. If you want to say Italian, great. You want to say because it had been part of Austria-Hungary at one point, you want to say Austria-Hungary, great. Doesn't matter. I don't care. I know that I am Ladin. That's all that matters. I have my traditions, and I know who I am. For me, I know that I am Italian. I know that I have that genetic connection and an emotional connection to that country, having spent so much time there. However, I covet that piece of paper. And every time I think about it, I'm elated, and I cannot believe that it happened. And it makes me feel very much more connected to my family and to my ancestors. And I remember with the exception of my father's mother, I remember my grandparents very, very, very well. And I wish that they were around to see this. And I'm glad my parents are around to see it. And it means a huge amount to me, because that place has given me so much. And I'd like to be able to give back in a way. And this makes it easier. And then you don't have to wait on those stupid lines anymore at the airport.
Then everybody catches up with you at the baggage claim, and you think,
yeah, this is where it's all this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Stanley Tucci, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today. This has been a fun conversation. I hope it has been for you as well.
It's been absolutely great. And thank you so much, Lauren, for this. It was really fun to do. And thank you again for all your hard work and for, bringing a dream of mine to reality.
Of course. It was a pleasure and an honor. So thank you so much.
Thanks. I'll
Take care,
speak to you.
Stanley.
Okay.
Ci sentiamo presto. Ciao, ciao.
Sì, presto, ciao.
Stanley Tucci, thank you so much. That was a fantastic conversation. It was an honor to help you with your citizenship and an honor to host you here on Your Italian Podcast. To those of you in the audience, it is a call to action for all of you. As you have now heard, there are major developments in the Italian courts, culminating in the hearing on June 9th of this year. Please put something out on your own social media, telling Italy, what would your Italian citizenship mean to you? What would the fact that you're cut out of Italian citizenship mean to you if this law is allowed to stand? Together, we may affect the change that we need to overcome this current law. So please, one of us won't get it done, but all of us just might accomplish something. So Stan, thank you again. And everybody, let's come together and make this happen.